Hi, my name is Ashish, and in this video we will see how Azure policy initiatives can be used to enforce organizational standards. It cannot only enforce organizational standards, it can assess your compliance, it can manage Azure, and you can manage Azure resources very effectively. Especially when it comes to cloud governance, how you can achieve cloud governance with Azure policy, what are Azure policy and its components, right? So to begin with, Azure Policy is a service that allows you to create, assign, and manage governance policies that enforce rules and effects over Azure resources to ensure that they stay compliant with your IT governance standards. These policies enforce various rules and effects on resources, ensuring that they adhere to corporate standards and service level agreements. These policies are described in JSON format and are known as policy definitions. Azure policy is crucial for enforcing organization standards and assessing compliance on a large scale. So to explain it more, I'll just quickly log on to the portal and take it from there. All right, I am logged on to the Azure portal, and if you will see, now if you'll see Azure policy, click on here. This will bring up I don't have any policies created, so these are the by default stage that you will see, right? So compliance state changes events are now available at the management group level. So this is the scope, because I only have this pay-as-you-go subscription, right? So in here you can define it more. Let's say if I want to check what all policies are applying on this particular scope or this particular resource group, it will show me the status here, right? And if you will click on getting started, it says assign policies, assess compliance, and author the definitions. It provides you real-time control and compliance assessment at scale. Browse. It will allow you to browse the built-in policies and then assign them whatever scope you want to assign them to. And the policy that I created, we call them policy definitions. You can use the built-in policies definition right here, whatever are available. CIS Foundation, see if you'll see the definition file. It contains a bunch of policies, right? Now you see the word assign initiative, but wait, we were in the policy section. So Azure policy initiatives are a collection of Azure policy definitions. So rather than applying more than 1 or 2 or 10, whatever policies you want to apply on a particular scope, it can be a resource group or a subscription level. Azure policy definitions make a collection that is called Azure policy initiatives. In this, Azure policy definitions are grouped together towards a specific goal or a purpose. Now, this Azure policy initiative is called CIS Azure Foundation v2.1.0, right? So it is a consolidation of Azure policies into a single item, and it provides or it allows centralized control and enforcement of configuration across Azure resources. Now, if you will see, it has policies for key vaults, functions app services. It would have for public network, SSL, Postgres, SQL, email, whatever storage accounts, or your virtual machine, SQL Server, audit virtual machines, management policies as well, right? Because there are different industry specific organizations, like I would have a government sector, public sector, finance, and other digital transformation sectors, right? All these segmentation done on the industry level or industry specific segmentation, they need proper compliance and governance. Now, we can achieve this by adopting specific Azure policy initiative to address the complexity of compliance with national and regional regulatory requirements. As a user, we can create Azure policy initiatives that aid in customizing deployments to reduce the time needed to audit environments, right? And the initiatives help public sector partners and customers create cloud guardrails and enforce specific regulations effectively. So we'll see, you can assign an initiative. Let's say I want to go ahead with this initiative. I will click on assign an initiative and I will select if I want to assign it to a resource on a resource group level. I will say okay. And if I want to exclude anything from this resource, I don't have a resource created in this empty resource group, but that is how you narrow down the scope. All right. And I don't want it, right? So in here, you will see the initiative definition. I want to use this initiative. This will be version 1. It is not overriding. Let's say I give it the same assignment name, description, policy enforcement. What it does, it says when enforcement mode is disabled, the policy effect is not enforced. That is, the deny policy won't deny resources. Compliance assessment results are still available. So it would be in a read-only mode or in an audit mode, right? You can say review and create. Operation name, you can give it an operation name. To the create and manage an entity for remediation, no. There would be default non-compliance messages, and you hit on create. Now you are assigning an initiative on a resource group, but not on a subscription. That is how you plan. Now, how does this help in cloud adoption framework, or what we call as a CAF, like CAF? Okay, so the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure offers comprehensive technical guidance from Microsoft Azure. This end-to-end framework helps cloud architects or administrators or business leaders or interns or experts or program managers reach their cloud adoption objectives. How does this do that, right? So cloud adoption framework includes best practices, documentation tools that Microsoft employs, partners and customers contribute to formulate and implement effective business and technology strategies for the cloud. Now, whenever you are planning for Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure, you, as a business, you define the strategy, then you plan the digital estate initial organization alignment. Then you make sure that your platform is ready, and then you govern it. How you can achieve the benchmark or apply the initial benchmark best practices, right? Then you adopt to this overall change. Either you migrate or you innovate, right? When it comes to migration, you just migrate the business as is to cloud manually or with tools, or you re-architect, reform, or you make sure that it is following the well-architected methodology from cloud, which is it should be cost optimized, it should have operational excellence, it should perform with efficiency, it should be reliable, it should be scalable, it should follow the principles of elasticity, it should be secured enough, right? And then you follow the steps for cloud governance. I understand that cloud governance is a continuous process. It requires ongoing monitoring, evaluation, and adjustments to adapt to evolving technologies, risk, and compliance requirements. So the cloud adoption framework, the govern methodology, divides cloud governance into 5 steps. You build a cloud governance team, or if you have one, that's okay. You assess the cloud risk, you document cloud governance policies, and you enforce cloud governance policies, you monitor cloud governance. That is how the model works for achieving the cloud governance. How would you assess the cloud risk? You would conduct a thorough risk assessment that's unique to your organization, addressing all risk categories, including regulatory compliance, security, operation, cost, data management, resource management, and AI-related risk. Then you document the cloud governance policies. Very clearly, you document all the cloud governance policies that dictate the acceptable cloud usage. Then you enforce cloud governance policies. You have to implement a systematic approach to ensure compliance with cloud governance policies You use the automated tools alongside manual oversight to enforce the compliance. Then you monitor the cloud governance regularly. Monitor your cloud usage and governance teams to ensure ongoing compliance with the established cloud governance policy. And now when it comes to governance actions that we can enforce with with Azure policy, it would be like, you need to ensure that your team deploys Azure resources only to allowed regions. You need to enforce your application rules to comply with your data residency requirements. You only allow certain virtual machine sizes for your cloud environment. You enforce the consistent application of tags across resources. You recommend system updates on your servers. You allow multi-factor authentication for all subscription accounts. You require resources to send diagnostic logs to an Azure Monitor Logs workspace. And then we come to Azure policy design principles, right? You remember that diagram we created, how we have the hierarchy of Azure components, or you have a tenant root group, you have a management group, then the subscription, resource groups and resources, right? So the Azure structure starts with the tenant root group at the top, followed by a hierarchy of management group, which can extend to 6 levels beneath the root. The definition of each level in the management hierarchy and relationship between these levels would be consist of resource groups, subscriptions, management groups. And then we need to discuss a little bit about Azure policy resources as well. Azure policy enforces organizational standards and assess compliance at scale. It evaluates Azure resources and actions by comparing their properties to business rules, providing an aggregated view of the environment's overall state, right? So it would have, so if I go to the one of the definitions, so this is a policy definition, right? Key vault secrets should have an expiration date. So this is the definition. So I need to define a policy, logic and effect, right? In this definition, I am defining the policy, logic and the effect. Audit. It allows a non-compliant resources to be created but flags it as a non-compliant. If I assign this policy on a resource where when we have key vaults, it would assess that resource and make sure that that resource complies to this Azure policy definition, but would do that in audit mode so that it would allow a non-compliant resources to be created. It would not delete it or make it disabled, but flag it as a non-compliant. But if I would set the effect to deny, it would block the resource creation if I would create a key vault which does not have an expiration date, right? So if I'm applying it within this initiative, I'm grouping all the policy definitions to simplify the assignments. Then I assign this, like I assign an initiative. Now if I'll click on a specific definition, I get an option to assign a policy. So I can assign a policy or I can assign an initiative to a scope of resources, or on the top level or into the sub level. Then I exempt a resource or resource hierarchy from the evaluation. When I assign a policy like I'm doing now, I am getting an exclusion. So let's say if I assign choose a subscription, okay, I'll select it. Now I get an exception here. Choose a resource group on which I do not want to assign this policy or an initiative, right? So though it will have this policy applied or assigned to this subscription, but this is an exclusion that this would not be scanned for any mismatch or diversion from this setting, right? Then I would set the compliance state of a resource for a given manual policy, and then once it scans the configuration, it would give me the recommendations and the remediation plan, right? It would define the task to bring non-compliant resources to modify or deploy if not exist policy into compliance, right? So if I select the option deploy if not exist, it will actually deploy that remediation and fix that diversion that is not meeting up to this policy definition or that initiator. Now we have built-in policy and a custom policy. Now, built-in policy is a type of policy definition that's generated by Azure Resource Provider, which is what you see now on your screen and which is available by default, right? So if I group all these built-in policy definitions, it would be called as a built-in initiative, right? And then I have a custom policy, which is a type of policy definition that's written by a policy user when no built-in policy maps to your requirement. Let's say you want to assign a policy and you do not find that setting enabled or assign that policy enabled within the built-in policy. You can write your own custom policy as per your custom needs. Now, when you group all those custom policies into an initiative, it will call custom policy initiative. It would be segregated, but the assignment would work same for both, right? So policy assignments define which resources are evaluated by a policy definition or an initiative or through a built-in initiative or through a custom initiative. Exemptions would work same for both. Remediations would work same for both. And then after you assign those policy, you do the evaluation of resources through Azure policy, right? Evaluations of assigned policies and initiatives happens as the result of various events. A policy or initiative is newly assigned to a scope, like we assigned that policy. If you see here, initiative was assigned, right? So more events in the activity log. Let's see what it does. Succeeded 11 minutes ago to this subscription policy. This is the scope which is a compliant, right? So when you are working with policy assignments in Azure, you need to understand the behavior and timing of a compliance scans, especially in brownfield scenarios. When new policies are applied to existing resources, there is an automatic full scan. A full scan compliance scan is triggered automatically every 24 hours. Then there is a manual scan for brownfield scenario. In the case where a new policy is applied to existing resources, you can manually trigger a compliance scan by running AZ policy straight trigger scan. Because when you assign a new policy, a delay can occur in the policy taking effect, which can be up to 30 minutes. So if that change is not taking place, you wait at least for 30 minutes. And then you would see the compliance status, which would be non-compliant, compliant, or it would give an error. It would show a conflict, or the resources are covered under an assignment with a deny action effect, which means they are protected, and then exempted unknown. It will be the default state for definitions with a manual effect. Then you can have the enforcement mode as well, which is a property of a policy assignment that lets you deactivate the enforcement of certain policy effects. This mode allows you to test the policy's outcome on existing resources without initiating the policy effect or triggering entries in the Azure activity log. Right, so this is what I wanted to cover on this topic. I hope this was informative for all of you. If you have any further queries, please mention them in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Have a good day.